Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf. I'm joined by Riley Fessler. Hey, Riley, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. And Minna Stein. How are you, Minna?
I'm good, thank you.
You going to kick us off today, Minna?
I am. The FBI has directed its agents to dedicate about 1/3 of their time to immigration enforcement, reducing their focus on white-collar crime for the rest of 2025, according to sources familiar with the matter. This marks a shift in priorities aligned with the Trump administration's intensified immigration crackdown, involving a broader redeployment of federal law enforcement resources. The move represents a departure from traditional roles, as immigration enforcement has not typically been a central duty of FBI agents.
I could pose this in the form of a question. Minna, Riley, if a white-collar criminal is elected president of the United States, what do you think the FBI will focus on less?
Probably white collar crime.
Probably white-collar crime.
Oh my God. Oh my God. You guys that's the reason you guys do this podcast. You understand how things work. And of course, if you're not going to focus on white collar crime and the white collar criminal was a racist, might as well focus on immigrants. So that's what we're going to try to do. Will it produce dramatically increased roundups of immigrants? Probably not. Will it produce improvements in U.S. crime statistics? Definitely not. Definitely not. Will fewer people be suffering from crimes? No, because of course white-collar crime is a big deal, and immigrants actually commit crimes. And I know this is a kind of a shocker, but they actually commit crimes at a lower rate than the rest of the general population. Riley?
During a visit to Saudi Arabia, President Donald Trump met with Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, and announced plans to lift longstanding U.S. sanctions on Syria. Trump framed the move as a way to give Syria a chance for greatness and said it followed requests from Saudi and Turkish leaders. The decision was welcomed by Syria's leadership as a critical step in rebuilding the war-torn country and rejoining the international community. Despite past concerns about Sharaa's militant ties, he has recently engaged in diplomatic efforts and hinted at normalizing relations with Israel.
I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. Give Syria a chance to get back on its feet. I don't have an objection to that. What I hear is that this didn't come from like a lengthy interagency process evaluating the merits of it, but came more from people like Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia pushing the White House to do this, and Trump saying, yeah, I'd be happy to give them that. Part of it is associated with the fact that Trump really doesn't care about a lot of international conflicts, particularly the kind that can't personally enrich him. And his America First isolationist approach is also kind of a laissez-faire approach, less engagement in these places. But it is also worth noting that the guy who is the current president of Syria, who helped to engineer the departure of Bashar al-Assad, for which he must get some credit, used to be on American terrorist lists and is all of a sudden okay. But, net, let's look at this with some hope, but also with some caution.
House Republicans defended a sweeping legislative package that includes major tax cuts, raises the debt ceiling, and imposes stricter rules on Medicaid and food assistance programs, drawing fierce opposition from Democrats who argue it benefits the wealthy at the expense of vulnerable Americans. Heated hearings across 3 committees were marked by protests and arrests, with the Congressional Budget Office estimating millions could lose Medicaid coverage and food assistance as a result of the proposed changes.
Yeah, remember Trump running and saying we're not going to touch those things, and now he's touching those things, right? So what do we call that? Is there a term for that in politics, Minna? When he says
is.
Yeah. Well, what would you call it when somebody says they're going to do something and then they don't do it?
I would call it a liar.
A lie. Yeah, that's it. It's a lie. That's exactly the term I was looking for. And, this is going to cost a lot of people. first and foremost, the ones we care about are the ones who are suffering and who need these programs. But secondly, of course, it's going to cost Republican political leaders. I saw a map yesterday that showed support for cutting Medicaid district by district in the United States. There was not a single district in the entire United States, red or blue, in which support for cutting Medicaid exceeded 15%. These policies are hugely unpopular, political suicide. But it is also galling that the estimates for the costs of the continued tax cuts for the rich, the continuation of the Trump tax cuts, the budget impact is $3, $4, $5 trillion. In some cases, people say it might be $6 trillion, but let's say it's in that range. And in fact, you note in this bill proposal an increase in the budget ceiling, debt ceiling of I think $4 trillion to accommodate these losses. What does that mean? Well, it means that the Republicans could propose tax cuts continuing for the rich at something like 75% of the level that they're talking about. So the vast majority of the tax cuts that they want for the people who least need tax cuts, let's underscore that, frankly, these tax cuts should all go away. But they could do that and still pay for all these programs. In other words, this is not just greed. It's greed plus cruelty. And a lot of the people suffering will be people of color. And so it's cruelty infused with racism. And the majority of them will be women. So it's cruelty infused with racism and misogyny. And if you take those four factors, greed, cruelty, racism, and misogyny, you've got the pillars of MAGA policymaking. Next.
The Trump administration has canceled an additional $450 million in federal grants to Harvard University, citing the school's failure to address alleged anti-Semitism and racial discrimination on campus. The action is part of a broader conflict between the administration and Harvard, which includes the freezing of $2.2 billion in previous funding and ongoing investigations into discrimination, foreign ties, and financial disclosures. Harvard has pushed back, accusing the administration of government overreach and defending its legal compliance.
As Harvard should, this has nothing to do with what the administration is saying it is. It is a bald-faced attempt to intimidate universities, starting with Harvard, to adopt academic programs and to constrain speech on campus in ways that are consistent with the ideology of the party in charge in Washington right now. In other words, this is part of the campaign against free speech, free expression, and academic freedom. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It has nothing to do with creating any improvements in our educational system. It is wrong. I think Harvard will ultimately fight it and win, but the administration will win because many universities around the country are afraid of this, and it will intimidate them into sort of treading the administration line. And this is how bullies work. This is how authoritarian governments work. Minna.
USAID is hiring lawyers to investigate employee misconduct, including unauthorized contact with the media, as part of a broader crackdown driven by the Trump administration and DOJ. Thousands of USAID employees are facing termination, and some who spoke publicly about their dismissals have since received threatening inquiries suggesting they violated agency conduct rules. Critics, including union leaders, view the effort as an intimidation campaign aimed at silencing dissent and punishing whistleblowers during a contentious size down of the agencies.
Yeah, of course, that's what it is. That's, Pete Hegseth, what is he focused on at Department of Defense? Leakers, or alleged leakers. This is all part of the Project 2025 effort to shut down, eliminate, silence government professionals because they were a thorn in Trump's side the last time he tried to violate the law, violate the Constitution, undermine the national interests of the United States. And so they think they can use these tactics. And these tactics will work because they're going to fire a lot of people. And some of the people they don't fire, who are fearful of their jobs, are going to remain silent. And you are going to have less transparency into the government that you pay for. And that government is going to be less likely to adhere to the oath to uphold the Constitution that everybody in the government takes, because that's their job. Riley?
Nope, that's it.
Well,
no more bad news today.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. I mean, I just saw a story here that Gavin Newsom, in yet another attempt to sort of curry favor with what he perceives to be the center in American politics, is proposing that they cut back on benefits to undocumented citizens, a large group in California. This is wanton cruelty and it's political pandering. So that's, the other kind of thing. We've got Trump's trip going on, which we'll watch closely. A little later today, we'll do a special episode of Deep State Radio looking at Ed Luce's new book with Rosa Brooks. And I really encourage you to look at that. Some of you may have seen it. All week long this week on Morning Joe, not coincidentally, because the co-host, Mika Brzezinski, is the daughter of the subject of his book, but well worth the discussion and great. The book is a great kind of insight into how government is supposed to work at a time when ours isn't working terribly well. And we've got a lot of other interesting stuff coming this week. So go to the DSRnetwork.com, find out what we're doing, put all these shows into your subscriptions, and support us as a member, because we can use all that support. No, seriously, you've heard me say this before, but you haven't signed up as a member. So go sign up as a member. And if you have signed up as a member, we're grateful. Thank you very much. And we'll see you all soon. Until then, thanks, Riley. Thanks, Minna. Bye-bye.